Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Watcher. Weston Page had built his life with the same precision he applied to his architectural designs. Every element carefully placed, every potential weakness reinforced. At 37, he'd achieved what most men only dreamed of, a successful firm specializing in sustainable residential design. A beautiful home in Portland's West Hills that he'd designed himself, and a family he'd protected from the chaos that had defined his own childhood. His daughter Molly had just turned 5, all wild auburn curls and fierce blue eyes that seemed to see more than a child should. His son, Thomas, was 3 weeks old, still red-faced and wrinkled, sleeping in a handcrafted oak crib Weston had spent 2 months building. But tonight, something was wrong. "Molly, sweetheart, it's past 9, Weston said, standing in the nursery doorway. His daughter stood beside the crib, one small hand resting on the railing, her eyes fixed on her baby brother. She'd been there for over an hour. She shook her head silently, not looking away from Thomas. Weston crossed the room, his footsteps soft on the thick carpet. He designed this nursery as a sanctuary, pale blue walls, blackout curtains, a white noise machine humming softly in the corner. Everything meant to create peace. But there was no peace in his daughter's rigid posture. "What's wrong, Mole?" He crouched beside her, keeping his voice gentle. "Is Tommy okay?" "I need to watch him," she whispered. "Why, baby?" Her small jaw clenched, an expression he recognized from his own mirror. "Just do." Weston had learned not to dismiss his daughter's instincts. She'd inherited his analytical mind, his ability to notice patterns others missed. When she was 3, she'd refused to go to a neighbor's house for a play date, crying inconsolably. 2 weeks later, that neighbor was arrested for possession of child pornography. Claire had called it coincidence. Weston knew better. "Okay," he said, surprising her. "But you need to tell me what you're worried about." Molly's lower lip trembled. "I heard the bad people." Ice flooded Weston's veins. "What bad people?" "The ones who want to take Tommy away." Weston stayed with Molly until she finally fell asleep in the rocking chair, her hands still extended toward the crib. He carried her to her room, tucked her in, then returned to the nursery. His wife, Claire, was already asleep, exhausted from night feedings and a brutal recovery from an emergency C-section. He stood where Molly had stood, looking down at his son. Thomas's tiny chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm. His son, his blood. The paternity test he'd insisted on, over Claire's hurt protests, had confirmed it with 99.9% certainty. But someone wanted to take him. Weston's phone buzzed. A text from his business partner, Ken Alexander. "Need you to look at the Morrison project revisions." Clients being difficult. He ignored it. For the first time in his career, work could wait. At 2 a.m., Weston returned to check on Thomas. What he found made his blood run cold. Molly was standing beside the crib again, perfectly still in the darkness. But she wasn't alone. In the dim glow of the nightlight, he could see what had terrified her into silence. The window was open. 6 inches. Just enough. He'd locked it himself before bed. The window was 12 feet off the ground. No trellis, no easy access, unless someone knew what they were doing. Unless someone had planned this. Weston moved with the careful silence of a man who'd grown up in a house where noise meant danger. He closed the window, locked it, then gently lifted Molly. She didn't wake, but her small body remained tense even in sleep. After putting her to bed again, he returned to the nursery and examined the window frame. Fresh scratches on the exterior lock. Someone had tried to jimmy it open from outside, stopped only by the security bar he'd installed as backup, a feature Claire had called paranoid. Paranoia, Weston had learned early, was just preparation without the luxury of proof. He spent the rest of the night reviewing the security camera footage from the 4 cameras he'd installed around the property. Nothing obvious. But at 9:47 p.m., a shadow moved past the side yard camera, gone before the motion sensor fully activated. Too deliberate to be coincidence. Too practiced to be amateur. At 6 a.m., Claire found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by laptop screens and empty coffee cups. "Wes, did you sleep at all?" She looked exhausted, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, dark circles under her green eyes. 33 and still beautiful. but the pregnancy had been hard on her. The birth harder. Molly's been worried about Tommy, he said carefully, standing guard by his crib. Any idea why? Something flickered across Claire's face. Fear? Guilt? It vanished too quickly for him to identify. She's probably just adjusting. New baby, less attention. She said she heard bad people want to take Tommy away. Claire's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Kids have vivid imaginations. Someone tried to open the nursery window last night. The cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the tile floor. Coffee splashed across the white cabinets Weston had designed to maximize morning light. Claire stared at the mess, her face paper white. "Claire," Weston said quietly. "What's going on? I can't." Her voice cracked. "Weston, I need to tell you something." Chapter 2. The Architect's Blueprint. Claire's confession came in fragments, like a building collapsing in slow motion. She'd had an affair. 2 years ago, during the 6 months Weston had spent in Tokyo, overseeing the construction of his first international project, the sustainable housing complex that had won him the Architectural Digest Innovation Award and enough debt to drown in. He'd been gone 18 hours a day, sleeping in shipping containers on site, video calling home when he could, trying to build a future while his marriage crumbled in his absence. The man's name was Desmond McCann. "I met him at the gallery opening," Claire said, not meeting Weston's eyes. They sat in his home office, the door locked, Molly's cartoons playing loudly in the living room to mask their conversation. He was charming, attentive, everything you weren't at the time. Weston said nothing. His mind was already working, processing, building a structure from these broken pieces. It lasted 4 months. Then you came home early, remember? For Molly's birthday. And I realized what I was risking. I ended it. Blocked his number. I swear, Weston, I haven't talked to him since. Until she flinched. He started calling again. 2 months ago. Said he needed to see me. That it was important. I refused. 2 months ago. Right when Claire had gotten pregnant. When the paternity test had been done. What did he want? I don't know. I never answered. But the calls kept coming. Different numbers. Then they stopped about a month ago, and I hoped. You hope what, Claire? She finally looked at him, tears streaming down her face. That he'd moved on. That I wouldn't have to tell you about him. That we could just move forward. Weston stood and walked to the window. His office overlooked the city, the downtown skyline he'd helped reshape with 3 major commercial projects. From here, Portland looked orderly, planned, controllable. He knew better. Every building had stress points. Every structure had weaknesses. Every design had flaws, including his marriage. I need everything, he said. Every detail about Desmond McCann. Where you met. Where he lived. What he did for work. Everything you remember. Wes, I'm so sorry. Everything, Claire. Now, Desmond McCann was a ghost. Weston spent the next 3 days compiling information while maintaining his normal routine. Client meetings, design reviews, family dinners where he and Claire moved around each other like strangers. She slept in the guest room. He didn't object. Molly continued her vigil, and Weston let her. He set up a sleeping bag beside the crib, told her she was Tommy's special protector. She took the job seriously, sleeping in 3-hour shifts, waking alert at any sound. His 5-year-old daughter understood threat assessment better than most adults. What Weston found about Desmond McCann painted an incomplete picture, which was itself a red flag. The man had minimal social media presence, no permanent address in Portland, and a work history that consisted of vague, consulting positions that disappeared when scrutinized. He'd met Claire at a gallery opening for local artists, but the gallery had closed 6 months later, its owner relocating to Vancouver without forwarding information. Professional ghost, either deep in debt and hiding, or deep in crime and careful. Weston was betting on the latter. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Ken Alexander, his business partner, had mentioned over lunch that a potential client had asked strange questions about Weston's family during a consultation. Questions about children, ages, home security. The client had provided the name Des McCoy and never showed up with a scheduled follow-up. Des McCoy, Desmond McCann, close enough to be alias, different enough to avoid easy connection. Did you get a picture? Weston asked. Kent nodded, pulling up his phone. Security cam at the office entrance. I kept it because something fell off. The man on screen was late 30s, dark hair, expensive suit, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Handsome in a calculated way. The kind of man who made women like Claire feel seen and special while men like Weston recognized as predator. I need you to do something for me, Weston said. And you can't ask why. Kent had known Weston since college, had been best man at his wedding, was godfather to Molly. Whatever you need. Chapter 3. The Pattern. The second attempt came on night 7. Weston had upgraded his security, additional cameras, window sensors, motion-activated lights. He'd also done something Claire didn't know about. He'd installed a hidden camera in the nursery itself, angled to capture both the crib and the window. At 3:17 a.m., Molly's scream woke the house. Weston reached the nursery in seconds, but Molly was already there, standing between the crib and a figure in dark clothes who'd somehow gotten the window open despite the new locks. The intruder froze when the lights blazed on, caught between escape and his objective. But it wasn't Desmond McCann. It was a woman, 30s, athletic build, blonde hair tied back, surgical gloves on her hands. She held a syringe filled with clear liquid. Step away from the crib, Weston said, his voice deadly calm. His phone was already recording from his pocket, back up to the cameras he knew were capturing everything. The woman looked at him, at Molly, at the baby. Then she dropped the syringe and dove for the window. Weston could have stopped her, chose not to, let her scramble out and disappear into the night while he held his screaming daughter and checked his son, who'd slept through the entire thing with the oblivious peace of infancy. Claire appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. Oh my God. Oh my God. Weston, what? Call the police, he said. Tell them we had an intruder. Tell them nothing else. But nothing else, Claire. He picked up the syringe with a tissue, careful not to touch it directly. The liquid inside was unmarked, but he'd have it analyzed. He already suspected what it was, something to sedate Thomas, make him easy to transport. Or maybe something worse, something permanent. Because that was the pattern he'd seen emerge over the past week of research, the pattern that had made his blood run cold when the pieces finally connected. Desmond McCann had a sister, Angeline McLaughlin, former nurse, license revoked 3 years ago for irregularities in patient care, a polite way of saying she'd been stealing prescription medications. No arrest, just quiet dismissal and a sealed file that Weston had paid a private investigator $5,000 to unseal. But it went deeper than that. Angeline and Desmond weren't just siblings. They were partners in something darker. The PI had found a pattern. Wealthy women, short-term affairs, pregnancies, and then complications. Miscarriages, stillbirths, SIDS cases. Nothing provable, everything coincidental, but too many coincidences in too narrow a pattern. And now they wanted Thomas. The question was why. Thomas was tested, confirmed as Weston's biological son, unless Desmond somehow believed otherwise. Unless Claire had told him something during their affair. Unless this was about something else entirely. Revenge, money, obsession. Weston watched the police take statements, photograph the scene, collect the syringe. He watched Claire cry and explain and omit. He watched Molly refuse to leave his side, her small hand gripping his shirt like a lifeline. And he made a decision. The authorities would do their job. They'd investigate, file reports, maybe even identify Angeline from the camera footage. They'd increase patrols, issue warnings, follow procedures. But procedures had loopholes. Investigations took time. Trials took longer. And sometimes, predators slipped through cracks in the system. Weston Page wasn't going to let that happen. He'd spent his career designing structures that withstood earthquakes, floods, and fire. Buildings that protected people from natural disasters and human threats. Now he designed something different. A trap. A perfect, inescapable trap that would use Desmond and Angeline's own plans against them. That would expose them completely and ensure they never threatened another child again. He just needed to build it carefully, piece by piece, with the same precision he applied to his best work. And the first piece was already in place. They thought they'd fail tonight. They thought Weston was scared, defensive, protecting. They had no idea he was planning. Chapter 4. The Blueprint of Evil. Weston's private investigator, a former federal agent named Reuben Liu who specialized in delicate matters, delivered his full report 3 days after the break-in. They met at a coffee shop in southeast Portland, far from Weston's office and neighborhood. Reuben looked like someone's grandfather. Salt and pepper hair, warm smile, cardigan sweater, which made people underestimate how dangerous he could be. "You're not going to like this," Reuben said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "But you need to know what you're dealing with." The folder contained the history of Desmond McCann and Angeline McLaughlin, and it was worse than Weston had imagined. They'd grown up in Bend, Oregon, the children of a nurse mother and absent father. Their mother, according to sealed court records Reuben had somehow accessed, had been involved in an illegal adoption ring in the 1990s, matching unwanted babies with desperate couples who couldn't navigate legal channels. She died in prison when Desmond was 15 and Angeline was 17. The siblings had inherited her business model, but refined it. "They target women in vulnerable positions," Reuben explained, keeping his voice low. "Recent affairs, unhappy marriages, financial stress. Desmond seduces them. If they get pregnant, perfect. If not, Angeline has methods. Medical background, remember? Methods. Hormone treatments disguised as supplements. Fertility drugs. Ways to ensure pregnancy happens. Then they wait. If the woman stays with her husband, they approach her with a proposition. Give up the baby to a better home. Get paid. Everyone wins. If she refuses, Reuben's expression darkened. That's when the accidents start. The folder documented 5 cases over the past 8 years. 5 pregnancies connected to Desmond's affairs. 3 resulted in babies who disappeared into private adoptions. Legal on paper, but the money trail suggested something darker. 2 resulted in deaths. 1 listed as SIDS. 1 is a tragic accident when the baby fell from a changing table. They sell them, Weston said flatly. They're selling babies to the highest bidder. Can't prove it. But yeah, that's my read. They've gotten smarter over the years. More careful. This is the first time they've tried a direct snatch that I can document. Either they're getting desperate or what? Or your son is special somehow. Worth the risk. Weston's mind raced through possibilities. Thomas was healthy, blood type O positive, no genetic abnormalities. Unless the paternity test. Could they have manipulated it somehow? Possible, but unlikely with the lab you used. More likely they convinced themselves Thomas is Desmond's biological child, maybe through timing or Claire's statements during the affair. That would make him family in their twisted logic. Valuable. And if I refused to give him up? Reuben didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out another photo. A woman in her mid-30s, pretty, sad-eyed. Rebecca Marsh. She had an affair with Desmond 4 years ago. Got pregnant. Refused his generous offer to place the baby. 3 months after her daughter was born, the house caught fire. Electrical malfunction, investigations said. Rebecca and the baby died. Her husband survived, but suffered severe burns and psychological trauma. He's in a long-term care facility now. The message was clear. Refuse, and your whole family dies. There's more, Reuben continued. Angeline has been using multiple identities. She's worked as a nanny, a home health aide, a pediatric nurse under the table. She gets close to families, assesses the situation, makes recommendations to Desmond. She's likely been watching your family for months. Weston thought about the new nanny Claire had hired briefly when Thomas was born, the one who'd quit after 2 days, claiming bad vibes from the house. The home health aide who'd visited when Claire had a postpartum infection, asking too many questions about the baby. The friendly woman at the pediatrician's office who'd made conversation in the waiting room. They've been planning this since before Thomas was born, he realized. Probably since before he was conceived, Reuben agreed. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Weston spent the next week becoming someone he'd never been before, a man willing to cross lines he'd previously considered sacred. He couldn't go to the police with what Reuben had found. Half of it was obtained through illegal means, hacked emails, surveillance without warrants, bribed courthouse clerks. It would never hold up in court, and it would warn Desmond and Angeline that he knew their history. No, this required a different approach. Weston had always believed in systems, in rules, in the law. His childhood had taught him that chaos was the enemy, that structure protected people. But structure had weaknesses, and predators knew how to exploit them. So he built a new structure, one designed specifically to trap these particular predators. He started with money. Desmond and Angeline were motivated by profit, so Weston would offer them profit. But it would be bait, and once they took it, the trap would spring. Through an intermediary, a lawyer friend who owed him a favor and didn't ask questions, Weston let it be known that he was considering a private adoption for Thomas, that the birth had been difficult, his marriage was struggling, and he was open to unconventional arrangements for the right price. The hook was set. Now he waited for them to bite. Meanwhile, he worked on the secondary elements of his plan. He documented everything. The break-in, the syringe, which testing confirmed contained midazolam, a powerful sedative, Claire's affair and Desmond's subsequent harassment, the strange visitors and calls. He created a detailed timeline, backed up with security footage, phone records, and witness statements. He also did something Claire didn't know about. He filed for divorce. Not openly. That would alert Desmond and Angeline that the marriage was ending, which might make them desperate. Instead, he had the papers drawn up, ready to file the moment his trap was complete. Claire had betrayed him, endangered their children. He couldn't forgive that, but he could use her guilt and fear to his advantage. "I need you to do something for me," he told Claire one night after Molly was asleep. They sat in the living room, the space between them on the couch feeling like an ocean. "When Desmond contacts you, and he will, I need you to seem receptive, like you're considering his offer." "What offer?" "Weston, I don't understand." "They want Thomas. They're going to offer you money, a new life, freedom from a failing marriage. They're going to make it sound reasonable, even noble, and you're going to act like you're considering it." Claire's face went white. "I would never." "I know, but they don't. You're going to be my inside source, Claire. You're going to find out exactly what they're planning, and then I'm going to destroy them." "This is insane. We should just go to the police. The police will investigate, arrest, and maybe convict if we're lucky. But their operation will continue under new names in a new city. More babies will disappear. More mothers will grieve. This ends now, and it ends completely." He saw the fear in her eyes, but also something else, determination. Whatever Claire was, unfaithful, weak, foolish, she loved her children. That was the one thing Weston never doubted. "What do you need me to do?" Chapter 5. The Inside Game. The call came 2 weeks later, from a number Claire didn't recognize. She answered on speaker, Weston beside her, recording device running. "Claire, it's me." Desmond's voice was smooth, concerned. The voice of a man who cared. "I heard about the break-in. Are you okay? Is the baby safe?" "We're fine," Claire said, her voice trembling exactly right. "But Weston's being paranoid. Extra security, cameras everywhere. I can barely breathe. That must be so hard. I worry about you." "Do you?" The bitterness in her voice was real. "You disappeared for 2 years, Desmond. No calls, no messages. Then suddenly you need to see me? Need something." A pause. When he spoke again, the smoothness was gone, replaced by something rawer. "I made a mistake, letting you go. But when you got pregnant, I hoped. Thomas isn't yours." The lie came easily now. She'd practiced it with Weston. "The timing doesn't work out, doesn't it?" "Think carefully, Claire. Late April, that weekend Weston was in Seattle for the convention. We were together. And then he came home early. You ended things, but the baby..." Weston did a paternity test. Tests can be wrong, or manipulated. "Claire, I think Thomas is my son. And I think you know it too." The audacity of the lie was breathtaking. Weston saw Claire's hand clench, her prepared responses temporarily forgotten in the face of such blatant manipulation. He squeezed her other hand, bringing her back. "Even if he was," she said slowly, "what does it matter now? I'm married. Thomas has a father. Does he? Or does he have a man who works 80 hours a week and barely knows his own children? Claire, I can offer you something better. A fresh start. Financial security. Freedom. Ow! There are families who would give anything for a child. Good families with resources, love, stability. They pay well for a healthy baby boy, no questions asked. You'd never have to worry about money again. And we could be together like we should have been. There it was. The offer laid bare. Sell Thomas and run away together, living on blood money. Claire's voice when she responded was perfect. Hesitant, tempted, scared. I don't know, Des. That's crazy. Is it? Or is it the sanest thing you've ever considered? Think about it. I'll call again in a few days. But Claire, his voice dropped, became harder. Don't take too long to decide. Windows of opportunity close. And accidents happen to people who don't recognize their chances. The line went dead. Claire immediately burst into tears, real ones this time. Oh God, Weston. He just threatened us. He threatened our whole family. I know. Weston saved the recording, backed it up to 3 separate encrypted drives. Which means he's getting desperate. Good. Good? How is any of this good? Because desperate people make mistakes. And I'm going to make sure they make every single mistake possible. The next phase of Weston's plan required help from someone with less ethical constraints. He found that person in an unexpected place, his contractor, Miguel Romero. Miguel had worked on 5 of Weston's residential projects, a master craftsman who could make wood and stone sing. He was also, Weston had learned through careful observation, a man with a complicated past involving cartel connections in Guadalajara and a very good reason to stay on the right side of U.S. law enforcement. They met at a construction site for one of Weston's current projects, a sustainable eco-house in the hills that was 3 weeks from completion. The shell was up, the bones of something beautiful. I need to build something, Weston said without preamble. Not a house, a scenario. And I need someone who understands how to make things look one way while being another. Miguel was quiet for a long moment, studying the framing around them. This about your family? The trouble I heard about? Yes. People wanting to hurt your kid? To steal him? Or worse? Miguel nodded slowly. My sister. She had a baby taken. 10 years ago, in Guadalajara. Sold to Americans. We never found her. He turned to face Weston. What do you need? Weston laid out his plan. It was risky, probably illegal in a dozen ways, and required perfect timing. It also required Miguel's skills in creating false walls, hidden compartments, and rooms that appeared one way in blueprints but functioned entirely differently in reality. You're building a trap, Miguel said when Weston finished. Using your own house as bait. Not my house. A rental property I'm designing for a client. Or at least, that's what the permits say. Weston pulled up architectural drawings on his tablet. A small house in a rural area outside Portland, isolated but not suspiciously so. The client is fictional. The property is real. And when Desmond and Angeline take the bait, they'll find themselves in a cage of their own making. And then I'll have everything I need to put them away forever. Or make them wish I had. Miguel studied the drawings, professional, eye-catching details most people would miss. This room here, the basement, you want it reinforced. Soundproof. Yes. And this electrical system, it's designed to be controlled remotely, including locks, lights, everything. Yes. Mr. Page, this isn't just a trap. This is a confession room. You're going to lock them in and make them talk. Weston met his eyes. I'm going to make them confess everything they've ever done. Every baby they've stolen or killed. Every family they've destroyed. And I'm going to record every word. That's dangerous. For you, I mean. Legally. I know. Miguel was quiet for another moment, then nodded. I'll do it. For my niece. And for your son. But Mr. Page, when this is over, we never speak of it. This project doesn't exist in my books or yours. Agreed. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that would either save Weston's family or destroy everything he'd built. Chapter 6. The Sweet Trap. It took 3 weeks to prepare the trap house. Miguel worked with his most trusted crew, men who'd learned not to ask questions and to forget what they saw. The house rose on a 5-acre property Weston had purchased through a shell company, isolated enough for privacy, but not so remote it seemed suspicious. From the outside, it looked like any other modern farmhouse. Clean lines, large windows, sustainable materials. Exactly the kind of property a successful architect might design for a client interested in rural living. From the inside, it was something else entirely. The basement had been reinforced with steel-lined walls, soundproofing, and a ventilation system that could be controlled remotely. The doors had electronic locks that could be triggered from Weston's phone. Cameras were hidden in smoke detectors, air vents, and light fixtures, all streaming to encrypted servers. The entire electrical system could be shut down with a single command, trapping anyone inside in darkness. But the genius of the design was in its subtlety. Nothing looked obviously wrong. The basement appeared to be a simple storage area with a workshop. The reinforced walls were hidden behind normal drywall. The cameras were invisible to casual inspection. It was a perfect cage disguised as a perfect home. While the house was being built, Weston continued his performance with Claire. She'd spoken to Desmond twice more, each time seeming more conflicted, more vulnerable to his manipulation. The recordings captured him becoming bolder, more explicit about his plans. "We have a buyer," he'd said in the latest call. "A couple in San Francisco, very wealthy, very discreet. They're offering $500,000 for a healthy infant. No questions asked. That's your share, Claire. $500,000 to start over. And you'd take the other half. Angeline and I have expenses. But yes, we'd split it. Family business." The casual way he said it, family business, made Weston want to reach through the phone and snap his neck. But that wasn't the plan. The plan required patience. "I need to see you," Claire said, her voice small. "To talk about this properly. Not over the phone. That's smart. Phones aren't secure. I know a place. Quiet, private. We can discuss everything. Not a public place. Too risky. What if Weston follows me? Where then? There's a property. A rental house Weston's designing. It's empty right now, still being finished. He's been working there constantly. I have the access codes." The lie was smooth, practiced. "We could meet there. No one would know." A pause. Weston could almost hear Desmond's mind working, weighing risks and opportunities. Meeting at a property owned by Weston seemed dangerous, but it also seemed legitimate. A wife sneaking away to a place her husband controlled, using his own resources against him. The betrayal would appeal to Desmond's ego. When? Next Tuesday evening. Weston has a client dinner in the city. I'll tell him I'm staying home with the kids, but I'll meet you instead. And you'll bring Thomas? Claire's breath caught. Real fear, real mother's instinct. Why would I? So the buyer can see him. Verify he's healthy. Claire, this is a business transaction. They need to see the product. I can't just take my baby. You can. You will. If you want this to work. Bring Thomas. We'll have our conversation, show him to the buyer's representative, and then you go home. Nothing changes until you're ready to commit. Think of it as a trial run. Weston shook his head violently. No way in hell was he letting Thomas anywhere near these monsters. But Claire understood. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll bring him. Good girl. Text me the address. I'll see you Tuesday." After he hung up, Claire collapsed against Weston, sobbing. "I can't do this. I can't pretend to give them our baby. You won't have to." Weston held her, feeling nothing but cold calculation. "Thomas won't be there. We'll use a doll, wrapped in blankets. In dim lighting, it'll pass long enough. By the time they realize, it'll be too late." Too late for what? Too late for them to leave. Tuesday arrived clear and cold, autumn bleeding into winter. Weston went through his day with mechanical precision. Morning meeting with Kent about the Morrison project, lunch with a new client, afternoon reviewing plans for a sustainable housing development in Beaverton. Normal. Routine. Nothing to suggest tonight would change everything. At home, he kissed Molly goodbye. "Grandma's coming to stay with you and Tommy tonight. Daddy has to work late." "Are you going to stop the bad people?" she asked, her blue eyes too knowing for a 5-year-old. "Yes, baby. I am." "Good. They're very bad." "The worst," he agreed. His mother-in-law, Eleanor Glover, arrived at 6. She didn't know the full situation, just that there had been threats, that police were investigating, and that Weston wanted extra security for the kids while he worked late. She was a good woman, practical and unflappable, and she loved her grandchildren fiercely. "We'll be fine," she assured him. "You have that big client dinner. Don't worry about us." The client dinner was real. Kent was actually attending it, prepared to cover for Weston if anyone asked questions. But Weston would be elsewhere, at the trap house, making final preparations. He arrived at 7. Miguel had already done a last walkthrough, confirmed everything worked perfectly, and disappeared. Remember, he'd said before leaving, "I was never here. This place doesn't exist." Weston checked every camera, every lock, every system. Then he settled into the small room he'd built off the garage. Observation posts with monitors showing every angle of the house. He'd spent $50,000 on this setup, worth every penny if it worked. At 7:45, Claire texted, "On my way." He's following. At 8:10, headlights appeared on the long driveway. Claire's SUV, arriving exactly on schedule. She parked near the front door, got out carrying a bundle of blankets. From a distance, it looked exactly like a mother with an infant. She went inside using the code Weston had given her, turning on lights as she moved through the house. To anyone watching, it would seem like she was nervous, checking the empty rooms, waiting. At 8:25, a second vehicle arrived. A black sedan, expensive but not flashy. It parked next to Claire's SUV. 2 people got out. Weston zoomed the camera in, confirming their identities. Desmond McCann and Angeline McLaughlin. The trap had caught its prey. Now came the hard part, making sure they never escaped. Chapter 7. Walls closing in. Weston watched through the cameras as Desmond and Angeline entered the house. They moved with the confidence of predators entering familiar territory. No hesitation, no second guessing. Desmond wore an expensive suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. Angeline was more practical in dark jeans and a leather jacket, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. They found Claire in the living room, standing near the fireplace with a bundle of blankets. "You came," she said, her voice shaking just right. "Of course." Desmond crossed to her, reaching for the blankets. "Let me see him." Claire pulled back. "Not yet. We need to talk first. You said this was just a meeting, just to discuss options." "It is," Angeline said, her voice smoother than her brother's. Nurse's voice, calm and reassuring. "We're all adults here, Claire. We're all on the same side. Are we? Because it feels like you're pressuring me to sell my baby." "Not sell," Desmond corrected. "Place. With a family who can give him everything. More than a struggling architect and his unfaithful wife can provide." The insult was deliberate, testing Claire's reaction. She flinched, exactly as expected. "Weston doesn't know about this meeting." "We know," Angeline said. "That's smart. The less he knows, the easier this will be for everyone." From his observation post, Weston activated the first phase. All the exterior lights shut off, plunging the property into darkness. Inside the house, the lights flickered once, just enough to make everyone look up. "Power grid out here is unstable," Claire said quickly. Weston mentioned it. "Sometimes the lights." They flickered again, then stabilized. Desmond frowned, but didn't comment. "The buyer's representative will be here soon," he said. "Just a quick verification, then we can discuss next steps. Nothing's final until you say so." "Where is this buyer?" "San Francisco, you said." "That's right. Tech money. They've been trying for years, can't have children naturally. They're willing to pay premium for the right baby." "How many babies have you done this with?" Claire asked, genuine curiosity mixed with horror. Angeline smiled. "Does it matter? Those children are with loving families now. Families that wanted them, could afford them, would give them opportunities their birth parents never could. We're facilitators, Claire. We help create happy families. By stealing babies, by recognizing opportunities," Desmond corrected. "Women get pregnant all the time in circumstances they can't handle. Affairs, bad timing, financial stress. We offer them a solution. Everyone wins. Except the babies who get snatched from their cribs in the middle of the night." The temperature in the room dropped. Desmond's charming mask slipped, showing something colder beneath. "That was unfortunate." Angeline got overzealous. "We prefer willing mothers. But when they become uncooperative, sometimes direct action is necessary." "Direct action," Claire repeated. "Is that what you call the family that died in the fire? Rebecca Marsh and her baby?" Angeline's eyes went sharp. "How do you know that name?" "Weston's been investigating you. He knows everything." The affairs, the adoptions, the accidents. He knows what you are. Desmond's hand shot out, grabbing Claire's arm. Then why the hell are you here? Because he asked me to be. Claire pulled away, and the bundle of blankets fell to the floor, revealing not an infant, but a doll wrapped in Thomas's baby clothes. Desmond stared at the doll, then at Claire, understanding dawning in his eyes. This is a trap. Yes, Weston said, his voice coming from hidden speakers throughout the house. It is. All the doors slammed shut simultaneously, electronic locks engaging with heavy clicks. The windows, reinforced and sealed, became impenetrable. The lights dropped to emergency mode, just enough to see by, not enough to hide. Desmond ran for the front door, yanked the handle. Locked. He pulled out his phone. No signal. Weston had installed signal jammers in the walls. "Let us out." Angeline shouted at the ceiling. "This is illegal. False imprisonment." "So is attempted kidnapping," Weston replied. "And murder. And selling babies to the highest bidder. We're going to have a conversation about all of that. You can't keep us here. I can't actually. This house is on 5 acres of private property. No neighbors within a half-mile. Soundproof walls. Nobody knows you're here except me and Claire." And Claire, the locks on the front door clicked open, is leaving now. Claire ran for the door without looking back. She'd done her part, played her role. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't witness. The door locked again behind her, leaving Desmond and Angeline trapped with Weston's voice and the weight of their crimes. "Here's how this works," Weston continued. "I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer truthfully. Every lie, every evasion makes this take longer. But eventually, you'll tell me everything. Every baby you've stolen, every family you've destroyed, every crime you've committed. And I'm going to record it all." "And then what?" Desmond demanded. "You turn us over to the police? With evidence obtained through kidnapping and coercion? It'll never stand up in court." Who said anything about court? The silence that followed was heavy with implications. "You're insane," Angeline said. "You're an architect, a family man. You're not a killer." "No," Weston agreed. "I'm not. But I am a father protecting his son. And I am someone who's done the math on how many children you've hurt, how many families you've destroyed, and how the legal system has failed to stop you. So we're going to try something different." "What?" "Justice." Chapter 8, The Breaking Point. Hour 1 was denial and defiance. Desmond and Angeline tried everything, threatening legal action, claiming innocence, accusing Weston of being the real criminal. They searched for exits that didn't exist, weaknesses in walls that had been designed without them. Angeline even tried to pick the electronic locks with a bobby pin until Weston remotely electrified the door handles with enough current to sting, but not harm. "You're wasting time," he told them, "and battery life. Once the backup generator runs out, we'll be in the dark." Much harder to have a conversation then. Hour 2 was bargaining. "What do you want?" Desmond asked finally, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. "Money? We have money. Lots of it. 500,000 liquid. More if you give us time." "I don't want your money." "Then what? What could possibly be worth this?" "The truth. All of it. Every baby, every family, every crime. Everything. And if we tell you, you let us go, I'll consider it." "That's not good enough. It's the only offer you're getting." Angeline tried a different approach. "We can disappear. Leave the country. You'd never have to worry about us again. Your family would be safe. Until you set up shop in Mexico or Thailand or wherever you run to. Until you find new vulnerable women and new babies to steal." "No, this ends here. You self-righteous bastard," she spat. "You think you're better than us? Your wife was fucking my brother while you were off building your precious buildings. You're not the victim here. You're just a fool who couldn't keep his woman satisfied." "That's true," Weston agreed calmly. "I failed my marriage. I was absent when Claire needed me. I'll live with that. But the difference is I never hurt children. I never destroyed families. I never killed innocent people who got in my way." "We never killed anyone," Desmond said quickly. Too quickly. "Rebecca Marsh and her baby. The house fire. That was an accident. Was it? Or did Angeline use her nursing skills to make it look like faulty wiring when she actually poured accelerant through the basement window? The same basement window that had been jimmied open, according to the fire investigator's report. Silence. I have copies of everything, Weston continued. Fire reports, insurance claims, witness statements. Shall we go through them one by one? Or would you like to skip ahead and tell me the truth? Hour 3 was when the cracks started showing. Angeline began pacing, her professional calm fracturing. This isn't right. We help people. Those children have good lives now. Better lives. Did you ask them? Weston zoomed one camera in on her face, capturing every detail. Did you ask Rebecca Marsh's daughter if she wanted to burn to death? Did you ask the parents of the children you stole if they wanted to spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened to their babies? They were bad parents. According to who? You? Desmond? What gives you the right to decide? Someone has to. The system's broken. Children born to addicts, to poor families, to situations that will only hurt them. We gave them better chances. By selling them like livestock. By placing them with families who could afford to care for them properly. And if the mothers refused, if they wanted to keep their babies despite your judgment, Angeline's face twisted. Then they were fools. And fools suffer. There it was. The admission Weston needed. He saved the recording, backed it up, kept going. Tell me about the SIDS case. Portland, 2 years ago. Baby boy, 3 months old. Desmond's head snapped up. How do you? I know everything. I told you that. The question is whether you'll confirm it or make this harder than it needs to be. It was an accident, Angeline said, but her voice wavered. What happened? The mother was using pills, alcohol. The baby was at risk. We offered to help. She refused. She stopped. You what? I gave him something to help him sleep. Just a little. But he was so small, and his system couldn't handle it. It wasn't murder. It was a miscalculation. Weston felt his hands clench into fists. A miscalculation. An infant's life ended by a miscalculation, and she spoke of it like a failed recipe. And the others? How many others? Hour 4 was when they broke completely. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the weight of their crimes finally crushing them. Maybe it was the realization that Weston wasn't going to let them go, wasn't going to stop until he had everything. Whatever the reason, they talked. 5 babies placed through illegal adoptions over the past 6 years. 2 deaths, the SIDS case and Rebecca Marsh's daughter. 3 families terrorized into silence when they started asking questions. Payments totaling over $2 million from desperate couples who didn't ask too many questions about where the babies came from. And the plan for Thomas. We thought he was mine, Desmond said, his voice hollow. The timing worked. Claire got pregnant right after we. And if he was my son, then he was family. Not stealing, just reclaiming what was mine. Even though the paternity test said otherwise. Tests can be wrong. Or manipulated. We hoped. You hoped you could steal my son and sell him for $500,000. Yes. The admission hung in the air like poison gas. And if I'd refused? If Claire had refused? Angeline met his eyes through the camera, no remorse in her expression. Then you would have had an accident. The whole family. House fire, maybe. Or carbon monoxide. Quick, painless. We would have made sure the children didn't suffer. How generous. It would have been business. Nothing personal. It's always personal, Weston said, when you're killing children. He had what he needed. Hours of footage, clear admissions, details that could be corroborated by investigation. Enough to put them away for life, if he chose to turn it over to authorities. But he never planned to do that. Here's what happens next, he told them. You're going to write confessions. Everything you told me, in your own words, signed and dated. You're going to include names, dates, details. You're going to make it impossible for prosecutors to ignore or dismiss. And then what? Desmond asked. Then you're going to disappear. Chapter 9. The Foundation That Holds. They wrote the confessions in the basement, at the table Weston had set up specifically for this purpose. For hours of writing, every detail captured by cameras from multiple angles. Desmond's handwriting was precise, Angeline's more hurried, but both documents were thorough. When they finished, Weston had them read their confessions aloud on camera, confirming every word. Now what? Angeline asked. She looked exhausted, makeup smeared, hair disheveled. You're going to kill us and dump our bodies somewhere. No, I told you. I'm not a killer. Then what's the point of all this? The point is that you're finished. Done. Your operation ends tonight. He unlocked the basement door remotely. Upstairs. Living room. They climbed the stairs like prisoners ascending to the gallows. In the living room, Weston had left 2 envelopes on the mantel. Open them. Desmond opened his envelope first. Inside was a plane ticket to Mexico City, $10,000 in cash, and a new identity, passport, driver's license, credit cards, all under the name David Morton. Angeline's envelope was similar. Plane ticket to Toronto, money, new identity as Andrea Mills. You're leaving the country, Weston said. Tonight. Separately. You don't contact each other, don't come back to the U.S., don't continue your business anywhere. You disappear. Or I release the videos and confessions to every law enforcement agency, every news outlet, every victims' rights group in North America. You'll be the most wanted criminals on the continent. And I'll make sure everyone knows what you did to children. We could run anyway, Desmond said. Take your money and tickets, and then keep doing what we do. You can't watch us forever. True, but I've taken insurance. Weston pulled up a screen on his tablet, showed them the interface. This is a dead man's switch. If I don't log in every 72 hours, everything I've collected, videos, confessions, evidence, automatically releases to a list of recipients. FBI, state police, newspapers, TV stations. Everyone. And if anything happens to me or my family, same thing. You can't touch us without destroying yourselves. You're bluffing. Try me. They stare at each other through the screen. Predator and protector, criminal and father. After a long moment, Desmond looked away. This is it, Angeline asked. We just leave? Start over? After everything you've done, you get to live. That's more mercy than you deserve. More than you showed your victims. But killing you would make me like you, and I won't do that. This way, you spend the rest of your lives looking over your shoulders, wondering if today's the day I change my mind and release everything. That's your punishment. That's not justice. No, Weston agreed. But it's what you get. Take it or leave it. They took it. At 4 a.m., Weston watched from his observation post as Desmond and Angeline drove away in separate directions. Him toward the airport, her toward the Canadian border. He'd verified their tickets, confirmed their flights. They'd be out of the country by morning. He'd also done something they didn't know about. Placed tracking devices in their new documents, embedded so deeply they'd never find them without destroying the IDs. For the rest of their lives, he'd know where they were. If they tried to come back, if they tried to restart their operation, he'd know immediately. The dead man's switch was real. The threat was permanent. They were caged by their own crimes, invisible bars but unbreakable. Miguel had been right. This wasn't just a trap. It was a prison that would follow them forever. Weston shut down the systems, wiped the computers, locked the house. By dawn, he'd have the property cleaned and sold. This place would cease to exist in any records, just another real estate transaction in a busy market. He drove home as the sun rose, Portland waking around him in shades of gold and gray. His city, his home, safe again. At the house, his mother-in-law was making breakfast while Molly watched cartoons. Thomas slept in his crib, peaceful and perfect. How was your dinner? Eleanor asked. Productive. Some good developments with a client. Claire appeared in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. She'd spent the night at her mother's apartment, as planned. Away from everything. Weston, she said softly. We need to talk. I know. They went to his office, closed the door. He handed her the divorce papers. I've already signed them. You betrayed our family, endangered our children, and I can't forgive that. You'll have visitation with Molly and Thomas, obviously, and I won't contest a fair settlement. But we're done, Claire. We're done. She took the papers with shaking hands. I understand. I'm so sorry, Weston. For everything. I know. But sorry doesn't change what happened. Are Desmond and Angeline gone? They won't bother us again. That's all you need to know. She nodded, wiping tears. What do I tell people? About the divorce? The truth. We grew apart. I was absent. You had an affair. It happens. That's simple. It is that simple. The complicated part is over. 6 months later, Weston Page stood in his office overlooking Portland, reviewing blueprints for a new project, a women's shelter with specialized facilities for mothers and infants. Pro bono work, his way of balancing scales. Molly had stopped standing guard over her brother's crib after the first week. She'd known, somehow, that the danger had passed, that her father had made them safe. Thomas was 7 months old now, healthy and happy, with his father's blue eyes and his grandmother Eleanor's smile. The DNA test on the office wall confirmed what Weston had always known. Thomas was his son, his blood, his future. Claire had moved to Seattle with a generous settlement and shared custody. She'd started therapy, joined a support group for people recovering from affairs. Maybe she'd heal. Maybe she wouldn't. That was her journey now, not his. Ken stopped by the office, dropping off plans for their latest project. "You seem better," he observed. "More settled." "I am. Good. You went through hell. You deserve some peace." Peace. Weston wasn't sure he'd ever have that completely. The memory of what Desmond and Angeline had done, what they'd planned to do, would never fully fade. And sometimes, late at night, he wondered if he'd made the right choice, letting them live, letting them run, instead of turning them over to face justice. But then he'd check his tracking system and see them still in their exile, still living under the weight of his surveillance. And he'd think about all the children who were safer because predators knew that sometimes victims fought back with intelligence and planning, that sometimes the trap was invisible until it was too late. His phone buzzed. A message from his private investigator, Ruben. "Thought you should know. Couple in Sacramento reported possible adoption fraud. Description matches your friends. Want to follow up?" Weston's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could say yes, could release everything right now, could end them completely. Instead, he typed, "Send them a warning. Remind them what happens if they break their agreement." Because that was the genius of his trap. It never really ended. Desmond and Angeline would spend the rest of their lives in prison, just one without bars. Every decision shadowed by fear. Every instinct to hunt and hurt suppressed by the knowledge that one mistake would destroy them. That was justice. Not perfect, but earned. Weston looked at the photo on his desk. Molly and Thomas, his fierce daughter and precious son. Worth every risk. Worth everything. His phone rang. A new client, interested in sustainable design, family-friendly features, extensive security. "Weston Page," he answered. "Tell me about your project." And he began to build again. Because that's what he did. What he'd always done. He built structures that protected people from storms. Even when the storms wore human faces. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.